Welcome to another episode of Let's Talk About It. We're here to destigmatize childhood sexual crimes. Many people don't want to talk about it. We do. With me today, I'm really excited to have Jeanette Finn. She's written a book called Girl Distorted, Joy Restored. That's right. Joy Restored and Journey to Innocent Again. I would like to open up with you just telling us your motivation to be here and to share your story with us today. So Jeanette, I'm going to go ahead and give that to you to just tell us a little bit about that motivation.
All right. So what motivated me to do this, like write the book and everything, is because joy can be restored. You can live a healthy, whole, healed life, and be happy about it. And I feel like I can help people do that. I feel like I want to share with them how I did it and how they can do it.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. I love to ask that question because I think people grapple with the idea of why would you guys be sharing this? But the beauty in that is most people don't say I'm living my life for other people. And so I think it's really beautiful to share the motivation because that's really what you're saying. So what
Yeah.
I'd like to do is start right now with you telling us just a little bit about your story. Take as much time as you need to give us your story so that we understand you and where the discussion will go next.
Okay. So I was sexually abused by my dad when I was 10 years old. He snuck into the bedroom drunk. And in the process of sharing my story, I have learned that I don't need to give all the details. There used to be a time when I first started sharing that I felt like the details mattered. Now I've come to learn the details don't really matter, because if I tell you the details, you stand a chance of not relating to me because it didn't happen to you like that, or you'll really relate, which would be a good thing. So then what happened though, after my dad came in there, 10 years old, right? The next time we were alone and my mother wasn't around, he told me that I didn't respond appropriately sexually as a
Right. The
10-year-old.
grooming.
So he told me that he was going to wait a while until I got older and that I would want sex. And in the meantime, he told me I should masturbate. I didn't even know what that was, right? So I'm
Right.
just getting all this overwhelming information that I can't even digest. And then he also tells me the only reason that he's with my mother is because she's good at sex, and that sex is all that matters. You will only stay married if you're good at sex. And dads need to teach their daughters, and moms should teach their sons. And just because here in America that wasn't appropriate, there are countries where it is. And
Wow.
so, yeah, so now
Yeah.
I could grow up the rest till I was 15. Okay, so now between 10 and 15, nothing occurred except for weird insinuations, maybe grabbing, developing breasts and him making comments, getting my period and him making comments, getting my first boyfriend. And in the process of writing the book, which is like, I would encourage ladies, even if they never want to share a book, to write it all out, because you will get revelations as you're writing.
Mhm.
And I kind of had always downplayed my sexual abuse a little bit, since it happened once and then didn't happen again until I was 15. It like hit me, oh my gosh, that sweet little child growing from 10 to 15 into womanhood was scared to death of becoming a woman, because I knew my father was lurking around, gonna come back and sneak into my bedroom some night, you know?
Right.
So
He had definitely set the stage, hadn't he?
yes, yes. So then at 15, he started sharing secrets with me about other people's sex lives, like people I knew. Okay. He told me he would get me a car when I turned 16 if I would have sex with him. Um, he told me he would give me the key to his secret apartment where he took girls to have sex. All this time, like cheating on my mother, right? um, if I would have sex with him. But I had a boyfriend at the time. He was 16,
Right.
I was 15, and I had lost my virginity to him, which I think I rushed into because the whole fear of what was going to happen, and I didn't want it to be my dad. So I told him, no, Kevin loves me. He would never want me to have sex with you. And he said, you ask him because he will want you to, because you're going to
Which
get
to
a
me
call.
is so crazy, Jeanette. It is so crazy that your father would even think that somebody would not only listen to that story, but then do what he did, agree with it. I was
Yes.
dumbfounded when I read that in your book.
See, it's because there's so many people that are messed up sexually.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, and then you take a 16-year-old boy who wants to be having sex,
Right.
who wants to secret apartment. What's the harm? You're going to get a car. OMG. So Kevin said, do it. So I broke up. I broke up with Kevin because I wanted true love. And I knew it wasn't just all about sex, even though that's what my dad told me. Well, then, just a long story short, this weird thing all fell into place about having to take a trip to California with my dad. I knew it was going to happen. I didn't tell my mom. I felt entirely stuck. But as a survivor, and now, on the other side, I recognized that what my sense of feeling like I was in control, so I could control and I could go on this business trip with dad, even though it was going to be like a 2-night thing and something was probably going to happen because my mom wasn't going to be there. I felt like in my mind that, okay, I'll go, I'll let this happen. And maybe I will be happy. Maybe my dad can be my secret lover. Maybe it will be cool to have a car. Maybe it'll be cool to get a different boyfriend than Kevin. Or maybe I won't even want a boyfriend because it'll just be me and dad. OMG.
Right.
And to think that as that 15-year-old, I truly was believing it was my decision.
Right. Right.
And I was a
Yeah, I think it's fascinating listening to you because they are so good at their game. Unless you have been groomed, I personally believe that they have help from the dark side. I just do because it overtakes a person. And we've also been groomed from, I mean, there are caregivers, they're the ones that make all the rules. So he wanted you to believe that. I mean, you were doing the very
yes,
thing that he built in you to believe.
yes,
But go ahead and
yeah.
continue.
Oh my goodness. Well, long story short, I keep saying that and keeps being a long
It's
story. No,
okay. Well, that's what we're
no,
here for.
no. Yes, but I am living things out because I could make it a heck of a lot longer. Okay, so we go to California. It happens, right? Alone in the hotel room. I I don't really think much of it. I mean, I'm not like having orgasms or anything. I'm not, it's just like something where I have an out of body experience. I'm not really even quite there. I'm detached. I'm wondering if I want to do this or not do this. Just, okay. And thinking that, okay, maybe. So we go out to dinner the next night and he flirts with the waitress right in front of me. His new person, I think we're going to have a relationship.
Right.
And he flirts with the waitress and then actually even says, the busboy's really cute. Do you want me to get you and him a room? And then,
Right.
oh my gosh, I mean, this man is so sexually deviant, right? So I knew then, I just said no, but I already knew then this is the end. This is it. This is not what he said it is. This is all a scam. So after we got back home, the next time me and him were alone and I got off the school bus and mom's car wasn't there, I'm like, this is the day, it's going to happen today. And I was prepped for it because I already knew I'm not, he's a liar. I'm actually grateful that he was a liar because who knows, I might have stayed with my dad for a while. It might have been,
Right. And well, and that
oh,
happened. It happens. And you were
oh,
living out the very story he'd created. And reading your book, I saw that he started by breaking rules with you. Let's have this drink, let's have wine at the table when no one's looking. And I
mhm.
always felt like I was dad's confidant, his best friend. In fact, my counselor said, you probably knew more about your father than anybody. And so that builds in us this place that we
Yes,
are these secret lovers. They love us more than
yes,
anybody in the world.
yes.
And
Oh,
so it's a normal response to the kind of grooming that they've given to us for
yes,
years, Jeanette.
yes.
It's very normal.
Yes. And I love what you're doing about talking about it because that was my whole goal too. I felt like I just want to talk about it. This is what it is. This is what happened. I thought I was going to be my dad's lover.
Taking you to this
Right.
romantic dinner where you get wine at 18, and now he's flirting with the waitress. And I
Oh,
thought it was interesting that you said in your manuscript, but I wanted love in sex. And yet this was your father. And this is just though how people often, it's funny, Jeanette, I get these people that will come on and leave reviews like, I can't be sympathetic for Jody because she should have shot her dad. And instead she hugs him because they can't relate to this love card. The love card is so big, and it's something that it's horrible to explain, but when
yeah.
you've lived it, it's incredibly natural. It's more
Well,
natural than not feeling that way, right?
right. And the thing is, my dad was a very likable person.
Oh, of course.
He was, yes, he was
Right.
charismatic. I ran into friends from my childhood recently, and he said, I'm sorry for what happened because he
Right.
now knows, right? And I knew him since he was born, and now, he's 52. We hadn't seen each other for like 20 years. But he says to me, I'm sorry that happened, but I still have just got to say, your dad was the greatest guy.
Right. Yeah, you know what? And people don't understand that they have to be charismatic, or you know what I mean? People think that pedophiles are these old men that live in these trenches and have no hair and have a hat over, and then they're exposing themselves in a dark corner as an old
Yeah,
lech. These are good-looking people who have successful jobs, drive nice cars, have a
yeah,
family, children,
yeah,
beautiful wife, and they're raping and
yeah,
molesting their children. Yeah. So
yeah.
the image is wrong. And this is bringing, if we could build a world where people understood behind it, and not, the world will listen to, let's say, like The Body Keeps the Score, the man who wrote that book,
Mhm,
or Judith Herman, who wrote Trauma in Response. But to talk to one of us, they can't.
mhm,
It's devastating for them. And I want to
mhm.
take that stigma away and say, it's okay. When you got in a car wreck, you explained it to somebody. We just came
Yeah,
through a train wreck of a childhood, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
But you're right, these men are incredibly charismatic. They really are. They're very
yeah.
good at what they do. I really believe that darkness sits with them. I think when you go to the place where you can
Oh,
rape your own children, I don't even know if you can do
yeah,
this alone. I mean, I think it's a
yeah,
crime of hell,
yeah,
and quite frankly a perfect crime of hell, because look how often people stay imprisoned by something that they didn't do, right? So
yeah.
yeah, I so appreciate your candor around it, because it is a very difficult subject for people to wrap their mind around. They think that we're
Mhm.
going to hate them, but they cultivate love in us. And so that
Yeah,
cultivated love grows love back, right? Even though
yeah,
we
yeah,
understand it's bad, we understand
yeah,
it's wrong. We're not crazy in any measure, but it is that the Stockholm syndrome, right, Jeanette? Where,
yeah,
remember that the bank and the
yes,
robbers come in, and
yeah,
the victims of that not only didn't want to prosecute them, do you know they funded their defense? When
yeah,
you think
yeah,
about that, it's
yeah,
exactly, we were doing a natural thing. But go ahead and
yeah,
continue.
yeah. Well, so that day when I come in the house and he's standing there waiting, and I think he said something about afternoon delight. I don't quite remember. I just remember he came to kiss me and I pulled back. And I went down the stairs into this lower level area that we had and was thinking, oh my gosh, how is this going to go? How's this going to go? And he thinks I'm teasing, like this is going to
Wow.
be some kind of little, cat and mouse kind of fun game. And so he tries to kiss me again, and I pull back, and then we end up like wrestling, and he's got me on the floor, and my hands pinned by his knees on both sides, and he's trying to come down to kiss me, and I grab a hold of his hair. So now I have his hair, and he can't move because I got a really good clump of it. And
Wow.
he says, let me go. And I said, no, I'm not letting you go until you let me up. Let me go. I can't wait to get to heaven. And I'm going to have a rewind of this.
I love it, as you should.
Yes, because I want to see it and remember the words because I just remember that I will not let go till you let me up. Okay, so then we stand up together, me holding his hair and standing up together. Then I let go and I say, you will never touch me again. I will have to be passed out, knocked out. There will be bruises on my body, and mom will know.
I've read that in your book, and I was taken aback by, firstly, the strength that you show in saying, you know what, you're going to have to kill me to get to me next. And so you've obviously come to this determination that everything that he handed you was a lie, which we often
Yes,
do. My abuse started so young that I was just a robot by the time I was a teenager. So I had no fight left in me anymore.
yes,
But I think it's fascinating to me that you said we're done. And so,
yeah.
with that, and I'll add that I think hell is that your father will have to replay that moment for eternity. And wouldn't that be a wonderful thought? So, I'm curious to ask you, where was God during this time for you? Like, let's say at 8, at 10, what role did he or did he not play in your life and in your family?
Okay, so in the family, my dad was atheist.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
He did not believe in God. He thought Hitler was a good guy and had a great plan by wanting to create a superior race.
Was your father German?
My mom is.
Yeah, oh, okay.
He took
Yeah.
the sweet little German girl in America, and while he was stationed in Germany, he got her pregnant. He raped her.
Oh,
Their first
wow.
sexual experience was rape.
Wow.
Yes, my sweet little mom at 16, she grew up so sheltered. When she got her period, she didn't even know it was a period. She found the blood in the bed. She thought it was from prunes that she had ate the night before and snuck.
Oh,
So she
wow.
thought she was going to get in big trouble. That's how naive she was about what sex was and the whole
Wow.
thing. He took her out in the woods and raped her.
And then you were
Yes,
the result.
yes,
And he was a GI there, is that right? Yeah,
yep,
that's what I thought you said. That's
yep.
interesting. My father was a huge fan of Hitler. He would watch every documentary. Yeah, I just think that's interesting.
That is very,
I don't even know what that correlation is with evil
that
people,
is
but
interesting.
yeah, it is very interesting. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so that's very,
Yeah,
and
he was
so your mother was a Stoic Catholic, you said.
yeah, I called her closet Catholic because
Okay.
we never talked about it. So somewhere along the line, I went with a friend to church. Like I was 7 or 8, something around there. Um, and so I heard about God, and of course you always hear about the whole Jesus thing and Christmas and all that. Um, and I didn't really believe. I didn't think, yeah. And then I even read that one part of the Bible. Oh my gosh. See, one time, and this was when I was younger too, 10, 11, 12, with my dad already having abused me, right? But telling me he's not going to do anything until I want it, because all women want it
Right,
eventually,
right.
right? So I was talking to him about God, and he said, well, read the Bible. So I started reading the Bible from the front page. Okay. And then as you get through there for a while, there's this part where those two girls get their dad drunk to have
Oh,
sex with him so that his name will not die off. You know,
right,
the
right.
Oh my gosh.
I don't
You
remember
have
that exactly. I remember Abraham, or not Abraham, but Noah gets drunk and is, you
the
know,
boys cover him.
yeah, the boys
The
cover
boys
him.
come
So yeah,
in
I'm not
and
sure. Oh, that's
without looking.
interesting. But you know,
No, they're
I think that that's a fantastic point, because if you believe in creation and the God of creation, incest had to be part of the creative process. Well, we're not going to touch that right now. It does become wrong once the earth is
yeah.
populated enough. And things started mutating, because when you're pure and back when you're created, the mutation didn't happen, and the mutation came in when incest became wrong. And so there is all of that. But I think
Yes.
people,
Yes.
they always throw
Well,
that out there, like, well, if you believe in God, he created incest. Well, it's not really like that, but the earth did need to get populated for sure.
yeah.
So that
Yeah.
then blocked and that's understandable, right? So you
Yes.
think this actually is now supporting your father's position.
Yes. Yes. And so I just kind of put God on the back burner as a child. Like,
Right.
okay, he might be there, he might not, but I'm not going to try to find out more
Right.
about him.
That's a logical determination, I think.
Yeah. Because I didn't want
Right.
anything to support what my dad was doing.
Right.
So yeah, and then just through like up into the teens and like at 15 and 16, 17, all that, I I just believe that there was a creator of the universe because I can look around and see nature and obviously know it did not happen by accident. I mean,
Right. It's always fascinating to me to see how people who come from, because that's severe childhood trauma that you came from. We can lighten it, but that's severe childhood
mhm.
trauma. And
Yes,
it's and
yes.
it's curious to me how faith can play a very good part or a very bad part. My father taught Bible study in the front room and raped us in the back
Oh,
room. And so a lot of
oh,
times these men hide behind the cloak of religion. So I like to
yeah,
explore this question because God somehow gets blamed for a lot of stuff. And
yeah,
I think it's
yeah,
interesting. And then you can reconcile with him later in life or not. But it's interesting to me, where was he in these childhood crimes,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because we usually show up in life. My early life, I hated God. I remember looking up to the sky and saying, F off. I want
Uh-huh,
nothing to do with you. And I learned
uh-huh.
that the God that I know is not the God of my father. Two totally separate gods, God of religion and then
Yeah,
the God of the Bible. But anyway,
yeah,
so I don't want to turn
yeah.
this into a religious podcast, but I do think that it plays a huge
It
part,
does.
because there's when faith hurts, there's a lot of
Yeah.
that in there. We have to blame somebody. And a tool you used, to move into now kind of the category of what tools we've used to survive, you really used the tool of, I am going to co-create this with my father, kind of, right? Like, I'm going to take co-ownership in this somewhere. And I think as a child, it was probably the only thing that your mind could wrap around it. What other
Hmm.
tools do you think that you use? Like, let's say from 8 to 15, while you're waiting for him, you had to be hyper vigilant. That's a tool. What were the other tools that you used to just even stay alive in that house? And you know what I mean, without not wanting to run out the door and scream for help, which we should have, but we never do. That's another topic.
I don't really know because of the fact that he told me he would leave me alone. So I believed that. He
Oh,
told me he would leave me
interesting.
alone until I wanted it. So so he was priming me to someday that I was going to want it from him,
Right.
not just in general.
So did he reject you in those years? Did he not give you much time?
Um, yeah, he didn't like here's a good example. But this was still in the younger years. He one time when we were at a restaurant and I was talking with him and saying something, he actually stopped me and said, "Wow, you can actually hold a conversation now." So
Grooming.
yes, he had this level of like maturing, wanting to mature me. So in that 10 years to 15 years, it was mostly, I mean, he was still like a dad to me. And like we had a sailboat and talk about the dark side. He named that sailboat Warlock.
Wow. Wow.
So, so so when I was 13, we went on a sailboat trip from, you know, California, Newport Beach, all the way up to Ketchikan, Alaska. And it was awesome. I
So
mean,
just you, your mother and father?
yes, yes.
Wow.
And we did meet a couple that we knew, the Hensons and their two boys, on part of the journey. And then we went up farther. And you want to know something that happened on that trip that I think changed my life at 13? And maybe when I was writing the book, I realized this might be the catalyst of why I could confront my dad at 13. I mean, at 15, because at 13, me, mom, and dad are on that sailboat. Um, and my mom's 31 at the time. And my dad used to spank her sometimes when she was a
Oh my
bad girl.
goodness.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness.
If you don't behave, you get a spanking. Okay, so we're on the sailboat. So that's even another weird element of my learning how
Well,
women
you,
have no power.
yeah, it's almost like you were raised as another wife in that house, right? Or another
Yeah,
girlfriend, or she was a
yeah,
child,
yes,
but you
yes,
guys were both on the same you know what I mean?
yes,
Yeah.
yes. Okay, so on that sailboat, we were trying to anchor and a glitch happened and dad got all mad and my mom talked back to him in front of Jim and Berta. They were on their other boat, but they could hear the exchange and they could hear my mom talking back to my dad. That is
Mm,
something you do not do.
I
That is
understand that.
spanking warranted, right? So they get in the boat. My dad's going to try to spank her. He maybe even said to Jim, I'm going to go give her a spanking for that, right? When my
Wow.
mom charged around the boat on the inside, you could hear clunking and banging and yelling, you will never spank me. I will. And he didn't. That was the last time he ever tried to spank her because he couldn't because she fought him back.
And there were witnesses this time.
Yes. And
Yeah.
so and I do think that that was because 2 years later, I was able to fight him. I think that that was like the seed that got planted.
Oh, because you guys didn't often fight. And see, this is that love card. They don't lead with abuse. People think that they're running
Yeah,
around the house beating you up, and they don't lead with that. They lead
yeah,
with their love. And I write about they don't want to take your rejection. They're saturated with rejection. All their being has is rejection. They want
yeah,
your unconditional responsive love. That's
yeah,
what pedophiles are looking for. And that's
yeah,
exactly what your father was grooming you for. And
yeah,
so they don't like rejection. They do not. And it's funny when the other thing that I like to talk about is, do you identify rejection in the abuse? And when I asked you who was your father through those years, really, they reject us because an abuser only needs you when they're abusing you. They don't want you any other time. You're a pain in their ass. You know what I mean? Like dad
yeah,
would play games with me and we'd watch movies and that sort of thing, but not in a large amount of time.
yeah,
So it builds this rejection in you. And so the only time you really feel like you're accepted by them is when they're molesting you or raping you. I mean, I like to use the real words that happen
mm-hmm.
because I don't like to minimize it. I spent my half of my life minimizing it and it cost me a lot. So I don't like to minimize.
Yeah, yeah,
But when they're done with you, like in your book, you say your father goes to Mexico, right? And isn't he still
yeah,
there? And so it's ultimate rejection. It starts in rejection. You only
yeah,
get my love when you come to me, and it ends in rejection, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so is
Hmm.
he still in Mexico?
Um, well, that's another tangent. He supposedly did, but
Oh, like your
I don't,
uncle?
yes,
Yeah,
like
I
my
read that. I
uncle.
mean, I did read your
Yes,
entire book, and so I
yes,
thought that was, but all of these secrets, they're everywhere, right? These all of our
yes,
families, it's just infectious with lies and deceit and crime and
yes.
and so that brings me to another point that I wanted to talk to you about is you never really got to confront your father, or did you feel like you got to confront him in a way that you said peace? I went to see my father, even
Yeah.
if I'd have to stop and drink before I went because I was so physically frightened of him. But how
Mhm.
did that work for you? Did you wish that you said more? Do you feel like you got to say, because I do remember the exchange, and was it the dentist office or the insurance office or something?
Yeah. No, I didn't. I didn't get to have actual closure in that sense, like to get to tell him it was wrong. Because when it came out, that's when he chose to run. And then I ran into him that one time because I was having such a hard time in counseling because at 15 I stopped it. Why didn't I do something sooner? Why didn't I not go on the trip? I'm in control. I did it. I had a huge time. And that's where victims, I don't like to say victims, but we were victims
Right.
then. Okay.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
as a victim, we try to act like we weren't and that we were in control. And one of the first things in counseling is breaking down that concept that you had any control over it, that
Right.
you did anything that could have stopped it or started it. It was never you. It was always them.
Well, and I can share with you, Jeanette. I don't know if you've read my book, but I witnessed my father rape and then murder this woman, and then we went through the process of burying her on my parents' property where she still is
Mm.
today. But when I'd be with my counselor, I would always say, "We did this when we killed her in this room, when we did this," and he would always stop me and say, Jody, we've got to get you to a place where you quit saying we. And so
Yeah,
for you, it's the same thing, but they want us implicit with them. They want us in the violation and the crime, and they want to put us in their back pocket and make us co-creators in the crime while we're
yeah,
not. But they
yeah.
they that's the message they leave with us.
And just as humans, just being human, we want to have a feeling of control.
Correct.
So, regardless of any abuse of anything, right? The person who's getting is the victim still will cling to that concept that they are somehow in control because it makes them feel safer.
Well, and
Because
yeah, it's funny you say that because when I was reading that part where I love that you want to get into this open space where you can start boxing with your father. I love it, quite honestly. But one of the things that I realized is that in the California trip, when you think that you make a decision to go, I really, because coming from this home, I bet you didn't have a decision, Jeanette. If you said no, your father would have found a way and demanded that you went. But he
yeah,
wanted you to believe that it was your choice. He
yeah,
wanted you, he had already groomed you to say yes in
yeah,
that moment. But I
yeah,
believe, and I'm just maybe throwing it out there, if you had said no, I bet he would have made a coercion that insisted that you go. But I don't
yeah,
know. But I'm kind of knowing my father and knowing these men, they're all kind of cut from the same cloth. He did a
yeah,
great job in making you think you made that choice, but I'm not sure the choice was
yeah,
yours.
yeah. I don't think so. It
I don't
wasn't
think
really.
so. Right. It
No.
wasn't. He would have made you go. But you see,
Yeah,
they're so good at their game. And this is why we need to talk about this, not just for the world at large, but for other people that come through this that they're grappling with. Because you know what? Thank God that I could afford 20 years of counseling, right? I had great insurance, but a lot of people are in these positions that they can't. I want to
yeah,
break down. It's like, taking I live in Montana now, and they go out and get deer all the time, and they cut it in quarters and they break it apart. And healing is much the same way. It takes a lot of
yeah,
effort and and so by having these conversations, don't we hope to give, a piece of how this works and what it sounds like?
yes,
That to
yes,
me is why it's important to share enough detail that says, we get you. We get you and
yes,
we're here, right? We get you.
yes,
So I just
yes.
want you to go away with you did not have a choice in that moment. You might have believed you had
No.
a choice. I don't think you had
And
a choice.
yeah. And even like I go to the place of I could have chose to let my mom know what would happen if I went. Okay, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't, that's not what matters. That what matters is recognizing I had no choice. I really didn't have a
You
choice. No
didn't have
matter,
a choice.
I mean, and that's what happened at 15, no, gosh, 22, probably around there when I ran into my dad and I was at that point of counseling where the counselor had to get me to realize you have to recognize you were not in control, that it was
Mhm.
not your choice. You did nothing
Right.
wrong. You were groomed. You are a victim. Oh, I did not want to be a victim. I was so
Right.
big on rebelling, being a victim, that I couldn't heal.
Right.
It
I
wasn't going to be a
so
big deal.
understand that. I
Yeah,
so
and then
understand that.
that's what people need to, because just allowing yourself to realize you were a victim and you were out of control, it will not kill you. It will not, it's nothing really
Right.
to be afraid of. It's
Right.
something to acknowledge and then shed tears about. And that's where I was. So thank God, because at that point in my life, I had stopped drinking, came to a higher power through AA,
Hmm.
realized, oh, God helps me. See, before that, I just thought God sat up on the hilltop, looked down at all of us, and
With a
laughed.
great big stick, right?
Yes, and if you met the right person that helped you, great. Oh, you met the wrong person, he hurt you. Too bad, so sad. I mean, I just
Right.
thought he had nothing to do with my life, but he created everything.
Right.
So, but not that he helped. Okay, in AA, I learned that I have a power greater than myself to restore me to sanity.
That's
You mean God?
beautiful.
God actually helped me? He's going to restore my sanity. He's going to help me stop drinking. His drinking was one of the tools
Yes.
I used
Yes.
as a
Many of us
teenager.
do. Yes.
Yes. So that's when I was like, oh, cool. God helps me. Fast forward to running into my dad in that parking lot where I worked, and he used to come because they were his accountants, and I worked there as a tax preparer. I see him as I'm walking to the car, and he's walking, and we just walk past each other and say hi. And I just kept walking. And I get in my car and I start shaking. And I feel like God gives me my reflection in the mirror, in that rearview mirror. And he says, downloads, my child, you are now 24 years old. You couldn't say anything to him right now. What makes you think that you did anything of your own accord when you
Right.
were 15?
Right.
You were groomed.
Right. It's so
You
true.
were only responding how he had trained you to respond. Oh
Right.
my gosh, that was a beautiful moment actually, because I
Right.
got
It's
to
huge.
actually totally see. I couldn't confront that man just because the thing happened at 15. That was a whole different dynamic. That was a whole different situation. I never really did get to confront him. I never got to tell him what you did is wrong, and what you did really messed me up for years of my life.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Years. See, and those are the residual effects that do live in us. I mean, resilience and strength and clarity around when stress happens. I get very clear on things because stress
Mhm.
was something that was just a tool in my life. And so I also like to talk to other people that came through this because people judge us really harshly and they think that we're going to be nuts and crying in the corner and not or hard and telling everybody
Yeah.
to fuck off and all of these things. And so I really want another piece to this is I want them to learn us, Jeanette, and I want them to know us, and I want to know the sensitivity and the complication, but what life really controls anything? How little do we really control in this world?
Yeah.
And secondly, don't we all come to the table with our own demons? So I've met some
Yeah.
people that can't even get out of a room because of anxiety. And I just fly
Yeah.
past them, and so I just want to encourage you too that it's beautiful to talk to you and the things that you've lived through, really to still be the person you are. That's a remarkable feat to just be who we are. We shouldn't be who we are, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
it is cool when God comes alongside. And it is why I like to talk about that, because he gets a bad rap for a lot of this. And I don't
Yeah.
believe he had anything to do with it, but I certainly think there's a kingdom of darkness that has a lot to do
Yeah.
with it.
Yeah.
A lot,
Yeah.
right?
A lot.
So we talked a little bit about the symptoms that were left in your life as a direct result. You talked about alcoholism, but in your book you talk about a lot of not good relationships with men. I know for
Yeah.
myself, I've been married 4 times, and people always just make a great big gasp. And then I want to say, coming through what I came through, do you think really if I was in a 40 or 50-year marriage, it would have been an abusive marriage, I'm telling you.
Yeah.
So for
Yeah.
me, I had to learn and grow and go. And that's
Yeah.
just what it looked like. So what did that look like for you?
I stayed in a narcissistic
Yeah,
relationship for
see,
20 years and sexually abusive. I mean,
See, it's so sad.
yeah, yeah. And that's why what ultimately, because I went through lots of counseling and lots of, oh, I have some tremendous healing stories from some of those sessions. And I still stayed in an abusive relationship.
Right.
And when it got dissolved, only because he discarded me for a younger woman, I would probably still be in that relationship because of the stuff, because he was a wealthy man. I had everything.
Mm,
I actually liked my life. The moment when he ended up discarding me, I was at one of the happiest places in my life. I didn't care that we hadn't had sex for 6 months. I thought it was just part of where we were at. We had a 6 year old and a 9 year old. And yeah, and then we moved to Sylvie Island and I had a little mini farm. I mean, I was happier than a lark.
right. I know Sobeys Island. That's yeah, it's very cool.
Yes, and then he discards me. Okay, so then I end up mad at God. I'm 40 years
Right.
old
Right.
and I'm mad. How could you let this happen? I thought we were happily married, but I was just living in an illusion. I was only, you know,
Right.
I was isolated. And so after that, like the getting mad at God, and my whole point to all of this is because I wonder, but I have no regrets, but I wonder had I started pursuing a relationship with God, the level I did after my 3 year pity party and being mad at God. I mean, it didn't just,
Hmm.
my life started seeming like it's not going to get any better. So maybe let's really try the God thing. Maybe if I spend time with God in the morning, like Joyce Myers talks about, maybe it'll change things. I didn't read the Bible. I'm not a religious person. I've just always
Hmm.
believed that there was a creator and a higher power. Okay, the Jesus part of it seems kind of weird to me, but whatever. I'll start at least spending 10 minutes every morning, not even knowing what I'm going to do. I'll just sit there. And so I did things like that. And that's when I don't know, I just started getting like revelations about little things,
Hmm.
like deeper understandings, like seeing the world in a different way. And that like good and evil even. There
Hmm.
is good and evil, but you know that that tree that they ate from, good and evil, we didn't even necessarily, we wouldn't even, because everything works to good ultimately. That's the whole thing. The whole plan is all to work to good. When you divide out the things just like a cake in a recipe and you take the flour out and you eat flour by itself, it's horrid. You're going to say it's bad. Okay, but when you have all those ingredients and you make the cake and it's good, you're happy. That's what I started realizing about life. That if I can trust that there really is this higher power, this God that has a purpose as to why we're living this earthly life in these physical bodies, going through suffering and sins of men and
Hmm.
evil, but that there is an ultimate higher result. It's going to be a great cake. I am
It's a great
going
way
to
to put
start,
it.
yes, I'm going to start believing that. And if I start, I just want to see, will it work? If I, yes, and it did. Little by little, my life started getting better. I started getting happier. I started getting out of the self pity. I stopped drinking. I stopped smoking. Yeah. And that's where I feel like I want to help people because I feel like that whole higher power thing, the whole getting a relationship yourself with this higher power, not through religion, not through a church, not through the Bible, Jesus, this it's a combination and it will be worked out in your life as you pursue it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And go and it's cool because I think that people don't believe that faith brings revelation. I just know that it really does. And good counseling.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm never going to say
Yes.
good counseling, they know things that, it's like God
Yes.
made physicians. We really
Yes.
need them. But those
Yes.
marriages that we stay in, it's like we stay comfortably numb, right, Jeanette? And so
Yes.
we're not going to
Yes.
change it because we have stuff to preoccupy us. And stuff is never going to heal that broken heart. But what it does
Yes.
do is it stops us and prohibits us from actually looking for the next step in life, and we just stay stuck. And
Yeah.
so my first husband was so abusive that he began really abusing our children, and love for them made me leave that marriage because I just needed to get out for them. But I'd been there 18 years almost. And
Mm-hmm.
so, it's yeah, like when you said, if we start, I think that there is this thing where we don't want to just shake up normal. Like, I made it out. Yep, my dad raped me, but I made it out and I'm just kind of floating along. I had a really close girlfriend from high school tell me, people have come to me, my mother, and have said things to me about what happened and what my father did. I'm not going there. And I
Mm-hmm.
think, we all have the choice, but there's a cost to that. And there's a cost to that as we get higher. And we are supposed to live an abundant life and a life full of joy and all of those things. So,
Yeah.
yeah, anyway, I think that's a really cool share. But isn't that funny that the rejection that your father and you lived in, that marriage, when I listened to you, kind of mirrored that. And so the reason why we go and explore these things is so we don't continue to keep repeating those same patterns in our life, right? Because again, that rejection piece was there, unless you did these things sexually with him that you didn't want to do. So it's still
Yeah.
replicating. Listening to you, it kind of
Yeah.
replicated your father's role.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
people don't understand that, but it's all we know. It's like
Yeah.
putting on a cold jacket to go out in the snow. This is what we know. Just, if you were
Yeah.
raised with love, we were raised with abuse, and abuse
Yeah.
feels better to us. Well,
Yeah.
let's say it like this: abuse feels comfortable.
Yes.
It's relatable to us. We know it's an evil. We know. We don't know anything
Yeah.
outside of that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
it
weird.
is. It's definitely that. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
Oh, it's just weird, that whole like just human side of us that wants familiarity. We're
Yes.
so scared of
Yes.
something different. So we do the things to keep us in that same familiar feeling or that familiar energy.
That is
That's what
so, yes, exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, it's so true. One of the things that people don't understand, but it's really like, I don't know, dogs almost respond a little bit better. If you beat a dog, they're going to go hide under the table and not come back to you. You beat a child and the child runs back to you and returns for more beatings and more love. It's a
Yeah.
crazy thing. And we don't leave bad marriages, I think, often because we don't want that rejection again. And the abuse we could live with, but rejection is, to me, almost the ultimate pain in life. And I
Yeah.
didn't want the rejection of my marriage. I wanted that to work. I wanted my children to have a family, because oftentimes you didn't have brothers or sisters, but most incestuous families blow apart. They don't stay close. Or if they stay close, they're all hiding the secret.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So, in the last time, in the little bit that we have left, thank you so much. This has been a wonderful, wonderful discussion. I'd like you to just kind of just freewheeling tell us anything that you'd like to tell us. I'd like to know where we can find you, because I know that you do advocacy work, which is really beautiful. And thank you for that. So, I'm just going to give you an opportunity to share your stuff, to tell us where we can find you, and so on. So, go
I did
ahead.
start a nonprofit called Innocent Again, which is to provide free faith-based resources to survivors of childhood sexual abuse. So my two books are on there, and they have been approved by the prisoner book program. So I have sent some books off to prisons, and then because I'm not so good at working on trying to get donors, for a
Yes.
nonprofit, I did start a nonprofit called Innocent Again, which is to provide free faith-based resources to survivors of childhood sexual abuse. So my two books are on there, and they have been approved by the prisoner book program. So I have sent some books off to prisons, and then because I'm not so good at working on trying to get donors, for a nonprofit,
Yes.
I did start a nonprofit called Innocent Again, which is to provide free faith-based resources to survivors of childhood sexual abuse. So my two books are on there, and they have been approved by the prisoner book program. So I have sent some books off to prisons, and then because I'm not so good at working on trying to get donors, I'm working on it right now. Divinely Empowered Online Dating, because
Oh,
that is a program I can sell, because I can help ladies who want to get married use online dating to find their future husband,
that's
because that's what I
wonderful.
did.
Yeah,
Yes,
that's
that's what I
wonderful.
did.
And
Mhm.
create a safe environment for this.
Yes,
That's wonderful.
that is called Divinely Empowered Online Dating.com. There's some my books on there, and it's all just starting. So,
Oh, that's
be sure.
wonderful. I like that. I like that very much. That's awesome.
And
Great
then
idea.
yeah, so any ladies that are listening here that want to get married, you can join my Facebook group. It's called Get to I Do with Divinely Empowered Online Dating. And all the resources when I do start like hitting my coaching business and all that will go to fund Innocent Again to help get the paperback books into prisons.
It's wonderful.
But,
That's
yeah,
absolutely wonderful. All
yeah.
right. Well, Jeanette, thank you so much for being here today. And we will put those in this episode on YouTube. I'll go ahead and make sure that all of her information is dropped into that description. Thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.